A waitress takes her daughter to work. Suddenly, she runs to a millionaire's table, calling him dad. Before watching the video, please leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. The morning sun barely touched the horizon when Lena Carter tied her apron around her waist and stepped into the familiar clatter of silverware and sizzling griddles. The diner had long lost its charm, peeling linoleum floors, faded menus laminated years ago, and the soft hum of a jukebox that hadn't worked since Christmas. But to Lena, it was more than just her workplace. It was her battlefield, her sanctuary, and the place where she fought every day to hold her life together. At 29, Lena bore the quiet weariness of someone who had weathered more storms than sunshine. She wasn't born into struggle. Life had just unfolded that way. One decision, one twist in fate, and she found herself raising a daughter on her own in a town that had forgotten how to dream. Her days blurred into one another, early mornings opening the diner, double shifts on weekends, and collapsing into bed long after her daughter had fallen asleep. There was no glamour in serving coffee to truckers or scrubbing syrup from tables, but it paid just enough to keep the lights on, or most of them. Lena's life was a constant dance with numbers. Rent due on the 5th, groceries on Tuesday when the store offered a discount, and Gracie's school shoes bought a size too big so they'd last through the year. She didn't complain. She couldn't afford to. Complaining didn't fill the fridge or patch the hole in her daughter's backpack. Instead, she powered through, hands raw from hot dishwater, feet aching from the 12-hour shifts, but always with a soft smile when she came home, always with her arms open for Gracie. Gracie was 6 going on 16, full of questions about the world and dreams too big for the one-bedroom apartment they called home. She had Lena's eyes, wide and full of wonder, but her smile was all her own, a radiant thing that could brighten even the darkest corners of Lena's exhaustion. Every time Lena looked at her daughter, she felt a pang of guilt mixed with awe. Guilt for not being able to give her more, and awe that something so beautiful, so kind and bright, had come from her. There were nights Lena lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was enough. If love could make up for the lack of a backyard to play in, or birthday parties held in the park instead of a rented venue. She worried about what Gracie saw when she watched other families. Fathers swinging their kids at the playground. Moms pushing carts full of snacks she couldn't afford. Lena knew Gracie was too young to understand what was missing, but she also knew children feel more than they say. And Lena felt it too. Every empty chair at school functions, every whispered question, "Where's your daddy?" But no matter how tired or afraid she was, Lena never let her spirit harden. She sang Gracie to sleep with lullabies made from old country songs, packed her lunch every morning with handwritten notes tucked inside, and told her she was the bravest girl in the whole world. Because she was. And Lena tried to be the kind of mother her daughter would one day be proud of. Not perfect, but present. Always present. It was on a chilly Tuesday morning that the threads of Lena's routine began to unravel. She had just finished dressing Gracie for school, brushing out the tangles in her honey blonde hair and buttoning her coat, when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Lena," her usual babysitter said. "I've come down with something awful. I can't take her today." Lena's heart sank. Her shift at the diner started in 40 minutes, and she had no one else to call. No backup plan, no family nearby, just her and Gracie against the world. She knelt down in front of her daughter, her voice gentle but firm. "Sweetheart, you're going to have to come to work with Mommy today, okay? It won't be for long. I'll bring your crayons and you can draw while I work." Gracie's face lit up with curiosity more than disappointment. "Will there be pancakes?" she asked. Lena smiled through the worry. "Yes, baby, lots of pancakes." They arrived at the diner just before the morning rush, the smell of bacon and burnt coffee hanging heavy in the air. Lena tucked Gracie into the corner booth by the window, setting out her paper and coloring pencils like a sacred ritual. "Stay here, baby," she whispered, brushing a kiss to her forehead. "If you need me, I'll be right over there." Gracie nodded solemnly, her little hands already busy with a drawing. And just like that, Lena slipped back into her role: server, cleaner, multitasker, magician. She poured coffee with a smile, juggled orders, and checked in on Gracie with every chance she got. The other waitresses gave her sympathetic looks but said nothing. they understood. In places like this, you learn not to judge. Life was hard. You just did what you had to do. As the hours wore on, Lena's body ached, but her mind never strayed far from that corner booth. She caught glimpses of Gracie's bunny-eared hoodie bobbing up and down, her pencil flying across the page. And for a while, it all felt manageable. Chaotic but manageable. Little did Lena know that on this very day, with no warning, the ordinary would give way to the extraordinary. That fate, so often cruel and silent, was about to stir. A customer would walk through that diner door, dressed in a suit far too sharp for a town so small. A man who would unknowingly carry with him the weight of a forgotten summer, and the truth Gracie had felt in her bones long before anyone else dared to speak it aloud. But for now, Lena didn't see any of that coming. She was just a mother doing her best, loving fiercely, and praying the day would pass without incident. Just one more Tuesday, one more shift, one more battle fought quietly behind a coffee counter, with a tired smile and a heart full of hope. The diner door creaked open just as the town clock struck 11, its chime echoing faintly down the sleepy street. The wind had picked up outside, sending crisp leaves tumbling across the sidewalk. But inside, the warmth of sizzling bacon and the low hum of friendly chatter filled the air. Lena was elbow-deep in breakfast rush, weaving between booths with practiced grace, her notepad in one hand and a pot of black coffee in the other. Her mind danced between orders and table numbers. But her heart? Her heart never drifted far from the little girl sitting quietly in the corner booth by the window. Gracie had been an angel all morning, just as Lena had hoped. Curled up with her crayons in a well-worn coloring book, she drew picture after picture, hearts and flowers, stars and stick figures with wide smiles. Every so often, she'd glance up to find her mother, and Lena would blow her a kiss from across the room. It was far from ideal, bringing a 6-year-old into a chaotic diner shift, but Lena had no choice. The babysitter's flu had come without warning, and in Lena's world, when plans fell apart, you picked up the pieces and moved forward. But fate has a way of slipping into quiet places. And on that chilly Tuesday, it walked in wearing polished leather shoes and a charcoal gray coat that looked too expensive for a diner with flickering lights. Lena didn't see him at first. She was busy refilling a farmer's mug when the bell above the door jingled. But something shifted in the room, the way the morning light caught on his watch, the sudden hush in conversation as regulars looked up from their plates. He was tall, striking in a way that made people look twice. Clean-shaven with the kind of posture that spoke of boardrooms and city meetings, not small-town diners where the most important discussion was which pie had just come out of the oven. He carried a leather briefcase in one hand, his coat dusted with wind-blown leaves. But it was his eyes, cool steel blue, that held the most weight. They scanned the room slowly as if searching for something he hadn't realized he lost. Lena noticed him then, her breath catching for reasons she couldn't explain. He looked familiar. Not in the casual, I think we went to school kind of way, but in a deeper, unsettled place in her. The kind of familiarity that stirred echoes. Ghosts. Memories. He took a booth near the window, right across from Gracie's, and sat down with a slow, deliberate grace. Lena straightened her apron and approached, notebook ready, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, with fingers that trembled more than she liked. "Good morning," she said, her voice softer than usual. "What can I get you?" The man barely looked up from his phone. "Just coffee. Black," he answered curtly, his voice smooth, practiced, like someone who'd been giving orders all his life. Lena nodded in turn, swallowing the tightness in her throat. But before she could take a step, the sound of a chair scraping against the floor cut through the diner's hum. She spun around instinctively and saw her daughter, Gracie, running, arms outstretched, her little shoes tapping rapidly across the tiles as she bolted from her booth toward the man in the expensive coat. "Daddy!" she cried. The words sliced the air in half. Lena's heart stopped. The coffee pot in her hand clattered to the floor, the crash drowned beneath the pounding in her ears. "Gracie!" she gasped, but it was too late. The little girl had already flung herself into the stranger's lap, her tiny arms wrapped tightly around his chest, her cheek pressed against his coat. The man froze. Phone forgotten. Hands suspended awkwardly in the air. Lena was frozen too, her limbs heavy with shock. Her mind raced. No, this can't be happening. This isn't real. Daddy? Gracie whispered again, her voice muffled by the man's jacket. You came back. I knew you would. The man, Nathan Hale, looked down at her, confusion painted across every line of his chiseled face. His eyes, once cool and distant, now searched the girl's features with a dawning disbelief. I I think there's a mistake, he said finally, his voice brittle. I don't have a child. Lena was already moving, snatching her daughter up into her arms with trembling urgency. Gracie looked confused, her brow furrowed, eyes darting between her mother and the man who, in her innocent mind, had always been Daddy, even if she had never met him. I am so sorry, Lena stammered to the stranger, her voice shaking. She must have gotten confused. Please forgive her. She's just a child. Nathan stood slowly, brushing his coat where Gracie's small hands had held tight. But his gaze didn't leave Lena. There was something in her eyes, some flicker of a memory buried deep. He looked at her like a man trying to place a dream he only half remembered. And then, something shifted. A tightening of his jaw, a furrow in his brow. His voice dropped low. Wait, have we met before? Lena's lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to lie, to say no, to take Gracie and disappear out the back door and pretend none of this had ever happened. But the truth was clawing its way to the surface, and there was no room left to hide. Can we talk? She said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Outside? Nathan nodded, bewildered but intrigued, and followed her out into the cold. The wind stung her cheeks as she clutched Gracie tighter, the child still puzzled, her little face pressed against her mother's shoulder. She's yours, Lena said once they reached the alley behind the diner, her voice breaking. Her name is Gracie, and she's your daughter. Nathan's world tilted on its axis. My what? Lena's breath hitched. 6 years ago, we met, briefly. You were passing through town. I never meant for anything to happen, but it did. And after you left, I found out I was pregnant. I tried to find you, but I didn't even know your full name. Just Nathan. And then one day, you were gone. Silence. Nathan stepped back, the weight of the revelation settling like frost on his shoulders. I don't understand, he murmured. You never told me. I couldn't, Lena whispered. I didn't want to ruin your life. My life, he echoed, stunned, and you kept her from me. I raised her alone, Lena said, her voice rising with emotion. Every night she was sick, every school project, every scraped knee. I was there. I didn't do it to punish you. I did it to protect her. And me, I didn't even know if you'd care. Nathan's face twisted with disbelief, anger, grief, and something else. Regret. He looked over her shoulder, where the little girl now peeked through the back window of the diner. And for the first time in his carefully crafted life, Nathan Hale felt the ground beneath him shift, not because of a business deal or an investor pulling out, but because of a little girl with his eyes and her mother's soul. She called me Daddy, he said softly, as if trying to make sense of the miracle and the heartbreak all at once. She's always asked about you, Lena said, tears streaming down her cheeks. And I always told her the truth, that you were someone special I once knew, that maybe one day you'd come back. Nathan looked at Lena, and in that moment, she was no longer just the waitress with tired eyes and flour on her apron. She was the mother of his child, the woman who had done the unthinkable, raised a daughter alone with nothing but courage, grace, and the kind of love that doesn't waver even when the world forgets your name. And suddenly, none of it mattered. The suits, the city, the meetings stacked on his calendar. What mattered was behind that diner window, with crayon-stained fingers and a hopeful heart. I want to know her, he said finally, if you'll let me. Lena's breath caught. She had waited so long to hear those words, feared them, hoped for them, dreamed of them. Now here they were, hanging in the cold morning air. She's never stopped believing in you, Lena said quietly, even when I tried to protect her from the idea of you. I don't deserve her, Nathan whispered. She's not looking for perfect, Lena replied, just present. Behind them, the diner buzzed on, unaware that a story was unfolding just beyond its walls, a story of secrets, second chance, and the kind of love that refuses to fade. And for the first time in years, Lena didn't feel quite so alone. The weight she'd carried for so long had begun to lift, piece by piece, word by word. As Nathan turned to wave gently at the little girl watching through the window, Gracie's smile lit up the gray afternoon like sunrise breaking through a storm. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not just recognition, but a beginning. A beginning wrapped in brokenness and stitched with hope. So, dear listener, don't look away just yet, because what happens next is where the real story begins. Stay with us, because love, real love, often arrives not with a promise, but with a question. Can we start again? And sometimes the answer changes everything. Lena had just finished wiping down a table when the sound of the diner door creaked open again, announcing another customer with the soft jingle of the rusted bell. She didn't look up right away. Her hands were busy, and her mind even busier. But something about the shift in the room's energy gave her pause. A hush fell for the briefest of moments. Subtle but real, like the way the wind calms before a summer storm. The diner wasn't the kind of place that hosted men in tailored coats and polished shoes. It was a town of boots and overalls, of pickup trucks and thick accents. Yet here he was. The man who stepped inside looked like he belonged somewhere important. Crisp black coat, hair slightly tousled, but clearly styled with intention, and a presence that didn't ask for attention. It demanded it. Lena glanced up from the corner of her eye, her heart giving a curious thump. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Some people wore silence like a suit of armor, and he was one of them. He moved to the window booth, just across from where Gracie sat quietly with her coloring book, and slid into the seat with an ease that made Lena uneasy. He was handsome, sure, but it wasn't that. It was something else. A stirring of recognition in the pit of her stomach that she didn't understand. She brushed it off, pulling her notepad from her apron. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady despite the quickening beat of her heart. "What can I get you today?" The man barely looked up. "Coffee? Black." His voice was deep, clipped, like someone used to being heard without having to speak twice. She nodded and turned on her heel, exhaling slowly as she walked away. But behind her, a chair scraped. Footsteps. Then, "Daddy!" The word ripped through the air like a bolt of lightning. Lena's blood ran cold. She turned, her eyes wide with horror, just in time to see her daughter, her 6-year-old Gracie, running from her booth, arms outstretched, straight toward the stranger in the window seat. "No," Lena breathed, too stunned to move. Gracie flung herself into the man's lap with all the joy and innocence a child could hold. "Daddy," she said again, resting her head against his chest. "I missed you so much." The entire diner fell still. Forks paused midair. Coffee stopped pouring. Conversations died on open lips. It was as if the world had forgotten how to turn. The man's hands hovered in shock, not touching the child but not pushing her away either. His face, calm moments before, twisted with confusion. He looked at Gracie as though he were staring at a ghost. Lena's legs finally found motion. She rushed forward, her apron flapping, her heart clawing at her chest. "Gracie!" she cried, pulling her daughter into her arms, her voice breaking. "What are you doing? Baby, that's not—" "But Mommy," Gracie insisted, her face full of wonder and something heartbreaking. "Hope. That's Daddy. I remember him. I do." Tears welled in Lena's eyes as she turned to the man. I'm so sorry," she stammered. "She must have gotten confused. Please, please forgive her." The man rose slowly, his face pale, his eyes locked on Lena now. Not in anger, not in disgust, but with a quiet devastation that she didn't expect. I don't have a child," he said. His voice shook. Lena opened her mouth to speak, to apologize again, but something in his expression stopped her. A flicker of familiarity, recognition. He tilted his head, squinting slightly. "Wait," he murmured. "Have we met?" Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. She wanted to run, to vanish, to pull her daughter through the kitchen doors and never look back. But she couldn't, not anymore. She looked down at Gracie, who now clung to her leg, eyes still wide with innocence. And she knew the truth couldn't stay buried anymore. "Can we talk outside?" she asked quietly. The man nodded, dazed. Outside, the wind had picked up, swirling fallen leaves around their feet. Lena wrapped her arms tightly around Gracie's shoulders. shielding her from the chill and the pain that was about to come. "She's yours," Lena said, her voice almost carried away by the wind. "Her name is Gracie, and she's your daughter." Nathan Hale looked like he'd been hit by a train. My what?" Lena took a breath, but it didn't help. The words burned in her throat. "7 years ago, we met. One night. I didn't even know your full name. You were just passing through. I didn't know how to reach you. I didn't think you'd even remember me." Nathan stumbled back a step. "But how could you not tell me?" "Because I was scared," Lena whispered. "I was broke, alone and pregnant, and I didn't even know if you'd believe me. I didn't want you to feel trapped. I didn't want to force you into something you didn't ask for." Nathan stared past her, eyes unfocused. He looked like a man watching the past come back to life. "I've missed everything," he said almost to himself. "First words, first steps, birthdays, school plays." "I didn't do it to punish you," Lena said, tears spilling freely now. "I did it because I didn't know how to ask for help. Because every time I looked at her, I thought, she deserves someone better than me. But I gave her everything I had." Nathan's voice cracked. "And all that time, she wondered about me? She asked every birthday to meet you. I never lied. I told her you were someone special once. That maybe if the stars ever lined up, she'd get to meet you. And then today, you walked in, like a dream she never stopped believing in." Nathan swallowed hard, his hands trembling. He looked down at Gracie, who peeked up at him from behind Lena's coat, eyes as soft and searching as his own. "Hi," he said gently, kneeling to her level. I, I'm Nathan." Gracie tilted her head. "But you're my daddy, right?" Nathan looked to Lena for permission. She nodded silently. "Yeah," he said, tears welling in his eyes. "Yeah, sweetheart, I am. And I'm so sorry I wasn't here before." Gracie blinked slowly, then stepped forward and wrapped her little arms around his neck. "It's okay," she whispered. "I waited. I knew you'd come." Nathan broke down. Right there on the sidewalk behind a forgotten diner in a town that never made the map, a man who once lived in silence learned the weight of love and the forgiveness of a child. From that moment, things didn't magically get easier. There were still questions, doubts, and nights Lena cried herself to sleep wondering if she'd done the right thing. But now there was also something new, something soft and terrifying and beautiful: hope. Nathan began visiting Gracie regularly, small steps at first, a walk in the park, reading a book together, bringing her her favorite apple juice in the little carton she loved. Lena watched with a mix of wonder and fear. She didn't know if this man could be the father Gracie deserved, but she saw the way he looked at their daughter, as if every moment with her was a miracle, and she saw the way Gracie glowed in his presence. They built something together. Fragile, imperfect, but real. Gracie's laughter began to carry further. She started drawing pictures with 3 people instead of 2, and sometimes, late at night, Lena would hear her whispering from her bed, "Thank you for coming back, Daddy." Nathan didn't have all the answers, but he had something he hadn't had in a long time: a reason. He found himself changing, prioritizing, slowing down. He no longer measured his days in meetings and deadlines, but in tiny giggles and sticky-fingered hugs. And Lena, after years of being the only one who stayed, finally found someone else who wanted to stand beside her. Not in front of her or behind her, but beside her. She still hesitated to call it family, but Gracie already had. In children, they often see the truth long before adults do. The cold wind bit through Lena's apron as she stepped out the back door of the diner, her daughter tucked gently in her arms. She didn't speak. Not yet. The world had gone oddly quiet. No more clinking forks or casual laughter from inside. Only the soft hum of passing traffic and the sound of Nathan's dress shoes clicking against the sidewalk as he followed behind her. Stunned, as if his body moved on instinct alone, Lena stopped beside a rusted dumpster behind the building where deliveries were made and leaned gently against the cold brick wall. She set Gracie down with care, crouching to brush her hair away from her face. "Sweetheart," she whispered, her voice shaking, "stay right here for Mommy, okay? Finish your picture, and I'll be right over there talking to him, okay?" Gracie nodded, clutching her crayon and coloring page with trusting hands. "Is he my daddy?" she asked, her voice filled with soft wonder. Lena tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just stay here, baby." she said, choking down the sob rising in her throat. She turned to face Nathan, and for a long moment, neither of them said a word. The wind swept around them, carrying with it the weight of all that had been unspoken for too long. Nathan's gaze didn't leave on her. His jaw was clenched tight, like he was bracing for impact. But his eyes, they were no longer cold. They were searching, haunted, aching. That little girl, he said quietly. She called me daddy. Lena nodded slowly, her arms folding over her chest like a shield. I know. His voice cracked as he continued. Why, Mayan? Why would she say that? Lena's lips trembled. Her breath came out in a fog as she spoke. Because you are. The words shattered between them like glass. Nathan staggered back as if struck. What are you saying? I'm saying she's yours, Lena said, the dam finally breaking. Gracie is your daughter. Silence. Long, agonizing silence. Nathan blinked rapidly, trying to process her words. I don't understand. How is that possible? Lena's heart pounded like a drum. Her knees felt weak. She looked at the ground as she forced the words out. Do you remember that summer? Almost 7 years ago. You were in town for just a few weeks. You came into the diner every day, sat at the counter, ordered the same thing, black coffee and scrambled eggs with hot sauce. You always had your briefcase with you, always on the phone, always rushing somewhere. Nathan stared at her, memories beginning to flicker in his eyes. And then, Lena went on, one night, the power went out at the diner during a storm. You stayed behind to wait out the rain. We talked, really talked, for the first time. And one thing led to another. Her voice broke and she looked away. I never saw you again after that night. You left, and I found out I was pregnant a few weeks later. Nathan stepped forward slowly, his voice barely audible. Why didn't you tell me? Lena's hands trembled. Because I didn't know how. I didn't have your last name. You didn't give me your number. You never said goodbye. I didn't know if you were married, if you were even in the same country. But you knew I existed, he said, pain rising in his voice. You could have tried. I did try, Lena whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. I searched for you online. I called every Nathan I could find with a New York number. I left messages, no one returned. I gave up when my belly started to show. I had to focus on surviving. On her. Nathan turned away, running both hands through his hair, his shoulders heaving. I missed her whole life, he whispered, devastated. Her first steps, her first words, all because of a one-night stand I thought would fade. Lena flinched at the words but nodded. You were a moment, she said, but she became my whole world. The air between them was charged with emotion, thick and heavy, like thunderclouds about to burst. Lena's voice trembled as she went on. Do you have any idea what it's like to hold a baby in your arms and wonder if you're enough? To sit by her bed at night praying she doesn't ask the question you can't answer? Where's my daddy? Why doesn't he come? Nathan turned to face her again, grief and guilt etched across his face. I would have come, he said hoarsely. If I had known, I would have come. I didn't know that, Lena said. I couldn't risk it. I was 22, working double shifts, living in a tiny apartment with no heat. I was scared, Nathan. I was so scared. And I didn't want you to come out of obligation. I wanted you to want her. He stared at her, blinking back tears. I do. God help me, I do. They stood there, surrounded by silence, their lives unraveling and weaving back together all at once. Lena wiped her face with the back of her hand. She's everything good in this world. She's funny and brave and so smart. She loves animals. She draws these little pictures of families with 3 people, even though she's only ever known 2. She believes in miracles. I think she always believed you'd find her. Nathan looked over at Gracie through the window, still coloring, humming to herself, her face a mirror of both of them. I don't deserve her, he whispered. She doesn't need perfect, Lena said, her voice raw. She just needs real. He nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. Can I see her? Lena hesitated for a long beat. Then she nodded. Come inside, she said. Sit with her, talk to her, but don't you dare make a promise you won't keep. Nathan's eyes shone with emotion. I won't. I swear. I'm here. I'm not leaving. Dear listener, take a breath. Feel that? That ache in your chest? That's what love feels like when it's been buried under fear, under silence, under years of being alone. That's what hope sounds like when it finally cracks through heartbreak, like spring breaking through the snow. Lena carried a secret for 6 long years. She carried it in her body, in her heart, in her empty bank account, in her full laundry baskets. She carried it in late nights, in early mornings, in birthday cakes baked from scratch, because she couldn't afford the store kind. And she carried it in silence because she thought it was the only way to protect her daughter from disappointment. But now she doesn't have to carry it alone. And neither does Gracie. And neither, dear friends, should you. Nathan hadn't said a word since the moment Lena whispered the truth to him behind the diner. She's yours. The words had hit him like a wave, crashing down on 6 years of silence. 6 years of a little girl growing up without him even knowing she existed. He stood in the alley, pale and trembling, trying to breathe under the weight of revelation. And Lena, she stood opposite him with arms crossed tightly over her chest, like she was holding herself together by sheer force of will. The wind picked up again, fluttering the edges of the order pad still tucked into her apron. Her eyes were red but dry now. She had no tears left. Not after years of rocking Gracie to sleep alone, of glancing out windows, wondering what might have been if things had been different. Lena wasn't fragile. She couldn't afford to be. But in this moment, with the man who'd unknowingly left her behind, and unknowingly left a child behind, standing inches away, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Exposed. Nathan finally broke the silence. I want to see her, he said, his voice low, shaken. I want to know her, be in her life. If you'll let me. Lena's jaw tensed. She didn't answer right away. Her mind flooded with all the worst-case scenarios. What if he took an interest for a moment, then vanished again? What if he promised the world, and then couldn't keep showing up? And worse, what if Gracie got her heart broken? You don't just step into a child's life like flipping a switch, she said, her voice tight. You don't get to decide today that you want to be a father and expect everything to fall into place. I know, Nathan whispered. I know that. She looked at him, searching his eyes. Do you? He swallowed hard. I know I've missed 6 years I can't ever get back. And that's on me. But I didn't leave you. I didn't choose to walk away from her. I didn't know she existed. If I had, I swear I would have done things differently. Lena wanted to believe him. Some part of her heart, small and guarded, was aching to believe him. But the rest of her had been in survival mode for so long, she didn't know how to turn it off. You didn't survive what she survived by handing out second chances easily. I'm not saying no, she said, her voice quieter now. But I'm saying slow. Nathan nodded, relief softening his face. Slow is fine, as long as it's not never. That afternoon, Lena walked back into the diner holding Gracie's hand, Nathan trailing behind at a respectful distance. The regulars glanced up, curious, but Lena kept her gaze straight ahead. She sat Gracie down, kissed the top of her head, and promised her a big pancake after her drawing was done. Nathan sat across the booth and for the first time watched the girl who carried his eyes in her mother's quiet strength. Gracie peered up at him shyly, tapping her crayon to the page. Are you really my daddy? She asked without fear. Just curiosity. Nathan blinked, nodding slowly. Yeah, I am. Gracie nodded like that was enough. Okay, you can color with me if you want. He picked up a purple crayon with trembling fingers, and for the next 10 minutes, the world stood still. They colored side by side, a butterfly and a blue sun, and Lena watched from the counter, her chest rising and falling like waves against a fragile shore. Over the next few days, Nathan kept his promise. He called, he checked in, he asked questions, not about himself, but about Gracie. What did she like? What scared her? What songs did she fall asleep to? Lena answered cautiously, never giving too much, always keeping a little piece of herself back. Then came the first outing, ice cream, just 30 minutes, a small public place. Lena trailed behind with a to-go coffee and a watchful eye. Gracie clung to Nathan's hand like she'd known him forever, pointing out her favorite sprinkles and telling him about her stuffed animals. Nathan listened like every word she spoke was sacred. That night, after Lena tucked Gracie into bed, she sat down alone in the kitchen, the house finally quiet. She stared at the photo on the fridge, a picture of her and Gracie from last Christmas. Just the two of them. And now, maybe, it wasn't just two anymore. Later that week, Nathan came by with a backpack filled with books he'd picked out for Gracie. She said she wanted to learn to read better, he explained, handing them over. So I found a few that I loved as a kid. Lena stared at the bag, then at him. You don't have to buy your way in. I'm not, he said quickly. I just want to help. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, thank you. More visits followed, trips to the park, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories on the porch steps. Lena stayed close at first, her eyes sharp, her body still stiff from years of protecting her heart. But something began to shift. Nathan never overstepped, never made promises he couldn't keep, and he always showed up. One afternoon, Gracie fell and scraped her knee. Blood ran down her leg, and she cried hard, those big, hiccuping sobs that only little ones cry. Before Lena could move, Nathan was already kneeling beside her, scooping her into his arms. It's okay, he said gently, wiping her tears with the sleeve of his coat. Daddy's here. I've got you. Lena froze, the words wrapped around her like a blanket of warmth and pain. Daddy's here. And this time, he was. Later, when Gracie was napping, Lena stood in the kitchen rinsing a coffee mug, her hands still shaking from the memory of Nathan holding their daughter. I keep waiting for you to disappear, she said quietly. Nathan looked up from the couch. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now? I mean it. Lena dried her hands. I've done this alone for 6 years. I don't know how to trust someone with her or with me. I don't expect you to, Nathan said gently. Not right away, but I'm here, and I'll keep showing up, not because it's easy, but because she matters, and so do you. Her breath caught, and for the first time she let herself look at him, really look, at the man who had unknowingly missed birthdays and doctor visits and late-night lullabies, at the man who was trying now, really trying, to make things right. She didn't forgive him in that moment, but something inside her softened. Maybe, just maybe, this was a beginning. Dear listener, you have heard Lena's voice now. You've felt her fear, her strength, her fierce love for her daughter. You've seen her carry the weight of the world alone, through empty pockets and lonely nights, through whispered bedtime stories and pancakes from scratch. And now, for the first time, she's not alone. But trust doesn't bloom overnight. It takes time, patience, kindness. If you've ever had to rebuild something broken, if you've ever tried to forgive someone who hurt you without meaning to, if you've ever had to be both mother and father, protector and provider, drop a comment below. Tell Lena she's not alone. Tell her you see her, that she's strong even when she doubts herself. Let her know she's doing an incredible job. And if you believe in second chances, in people who try to do better, hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs it. Let them know that it's never too late to choose love, because sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to keep your heart open. But Lena is doing it, one small step at a time. And maybe, just maybe, this little family is finding its way through forgiveness, through quiet courage, through love that refuses to give up. Nathan sat frozen on the bench outside the diner, elbows on his knees, staring at the sidewalk like it held answers to questions he hadn't even begun to ask. His mind was still reeling. Just hours ago, he had been a man on his way to a client meeting, grabbing coffee in a town he never thought he'd return to. And now he was a father, of a child he'd never met, of a little girl who had come running into his arms with blind, beautiful trust and called him Daddy without hesitation. Lena stood a few feet away, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, her fingers fidgeting at the edges of her apron. She'd said everything she could. The story had been laid bare between them like fragile glass. One wrong step, and it would all shatter. She had expected shock, maybe even anger, but not this silence, not this ache of grief across his face. Inside the diner, through the window, Gracie sat at the corner booth once again, scribbling with her crayons. Occasionally, she'd glance up, her little face pressed to the glass, waiting for her mother to return, waiting for her father to come back inside. She's a good kid, Lena said softly, trying to break the quiet. Nathan nodded but said nothing. She never asked for much, she continued, voice trembling. She's had to learn how to do without. But she's strong and kind, so kind. Nathan finally turned to look at her. She forgave me, he said like he couldn't believe it. Just like that. I told her I was sorry and she said, I forgive you, as if it was the easiest thing in the world. Lena let out a breath that was part laugh, part sigh. That's children. They don't love with conditions. They don't wait for apologies that are polished and perfect. They just love. She didn't even know me, Nathan said, shaking his head. And still, she hugged me like I'd been there all along. Because in her heart, you were, Lena said, her voice breaking. She made room for you even when I didn't know if I should let her hope. Nathan's jaw clenched. I don't deserve it. She doesn't know what you deserve, Lena replied gently. She just knows you're hers. He looked down at his hands, rough from work and cold from the wind. I missed everything, he whispered. Her first birthday, her first words, her first steps. You missed a lot, Lena said honestly, but she's still little. There's still time if you mean it, if you really want to be here. I do, he said immediately, his voice firm despite the ache. I want to be in her life. I want to learn how to be a father. I just don't know where to begin. Lena hesitated. Then with slow, careful steps, she walked to the bench and sat beside him. Begin with her, she said, not with guilt, not with promises, with her. She'll guide you more than you think. Nathan nodded slowly, then looked back through the diner window. Gracie had finished her drawing. She held it up proudly for no one in particular, her face lighting up with a radiant smile. I feel like I've already failed her, he said. She doesn't see that, Lena replied. She just sees a man who came back. Nathan looked at her then, really looked, and his voice dropped into a whisper. What about you? Do you see someone who came back? Or someone who left? Lena's breath caught. The question hovered in the air between them like a fragile bird. She'd built walls around her heart, not out of anger, but out of necessity. And now here he was, not just asking to meet their daughter, but to be seen again, to be trusted. I see a man trying, she said softly, and that counts for something. Nathan smiled faintly, just a flicker, and stood up. I'd like to go back in, if that's okay. Lena nodded. Let's go. They stepped through the door together, the bell above jingling lightly. Gracie looked up instantly, her face lighting up. You came back, she said, jumping off the booth and racing toward him. Nathan crouched just in time to catch her in his arms. She wrapped around him like sunshine. Tiny arms, pure and unfiltered, clinging to a man she barely knew but had already chosen. I drew a picture for you, she said proudly, pulling back to hand him the paper. It's our family. Nathan unfolded it with trembling hands. There were 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one small, all holding hands beneath a yellow sun and a crooked heart floating in the sky. That's you, Gracie pointed, and me, and Mommy. Nathan stared at the drawing, his throat tight. It's beautiful, he said hoarsely. I made it just now, Gracie said, because now we're a family. Lena turned away quickly, pretending to clean the counter, her hand pressed to her heart. She had raised Gracie to be strong, to be kind, to believe in second chances. But watching it unfold, watching her daughter live that belief, was more than she'd ever prepared for. Nathan sat with Gracie for nearly an hour, talking, coloring, laughing. And not once did she ask where he had been. Not once did she cry or accuse or wonder why it had taken him so long. She just was, wide open, warm, whole. It was only when the sun began to set and the diner emptied that Lena approached again, sliding into the booth across from them. We should go soon, she said, glancing at the clock. Nathan nodded. Can I walk you both home? Lena hesitated, then nodded. All right, but just to the door. The walk was quiet. Gracie held both their hands, swinging between them, humming a tune she'd made up on the spot. To anyone watching, they looked like any other family on a sleepy autumn evening. But to Lena and Nathan, every step was lined with unspoken questions and slow-forming trust. When they reached the doorstep, Lena looked at Nathan with guarded eyes. She's happy, she said. That matters more than anything. I want to keep showing up, Nathan said. I want to earn both your trust. I know I have a long road ahead. Lena searched his face for a long moment. You do? She said. But you started walking it today. Gracie pulled gently on Nathan's hand. Are you going to come back tomorrow? Nathan smiled. If Mommy says it's okay. Lena looked at Gracie, then back at Nathan, and finally she gave the smallest nod. Tomorrow. Dear listener, did you feel it? That spark, the moment where a child's heart cracked open the door for love to step back in? That's the magic of innocence, of forgiveness that doesn't come with conditions or countdowns. Gracie didn't know about broken promises or missed birthdays. She didn't need a long apology or a perfect explanation. All she needed was to be seen and to know that the person she hoped for was real. Some people might say it's unrealistic how quickly she forgave. But if you've ever had a child place their full, radiant love in your hands without hesitation, you'll know it's real. Children don't measure worth the way adults do. They just love. And Lena, oh, Lena, can we just take a moment and honor her? 6 years of silent strength, of birthday candles blown out without a partner by her side, of bedtime stories read from tired lips and shoes bought secondhand just to make ends meet. And still she showed up every single day, even when no one else did. It started with something small, a single scoop of strawberry ice cream, melting too fast in the summer heat, Gracie's giggle as she tried to catch the drip with her tongue, Nathan's hand gently passing her a napkin while she leaned against him like she'd always belonged there. It was just 15 minutes, an outing Lena cautiously agreed to, with a watchful eye and a tight knot in her chest, but in those 15 minutes, something shifted, something opened. Lena stood across the street, half hidden beneath the awning of the corner bookstore, pretending to browse the window display while her eyes never left them. Gracie's laughter rang out like church bells on Sunday morning, pure, sweet, and full of light. And Nathan, he didn't look like a man pretending to be a father. He looked like a man realizing it was all he ever wanted to be. That evening, Lena sat at the kitchen table while Gracie recounted every detail. The pink sprinkles, the spoon Nathan forgot to grab at first, the sidewalk chalk drawings outside the ice cream shop. Her words tumbled over one another with breathless joy, and Lena listened, every smile tugging at her heart, every innocent, "Daddy did this," pressing against the wall she'd spent 6 years building. She wanted to be happy. She really did. But joy, for Lena, had always come with a side of fear. What if this was just a phase? What if Nathan left again? She couldn't afford to believe too quickly. Not for her, and not for Gracie, but Nathan kept showing up. The next time, it was a Saturday at the library. Gracie had been invited to story hour, and Nathan had called to ask if he could take her. Lena agreed reluctantly. She followed behind in her old sedan, parking 2 rows over, staying just long enough to make sure he held her hand when they crossed the parking lot. She saw the way he knelt beside her to point out a picture book, how Gracie beamed when he read aloud with silly voices. Later that week, he showed up at the school gate just as Lena was preparing to walk inside. "Thought maybe I could surprise her," he said, holding a juice box and a hand-drawn picture with both their names scribbled in crayon. "You okay with that?" Lena stared at him for a long moment. The mother in her wanted to say no, wanted to protect the routine, the predictability. But then she looked into his eyes and saw something that hadn't been there before: consistency. So she nodded. "Okay, but stay in the car line, no skipping steps." "Yes, ma'am," Nathan said with a small, nervous grin. And that's how it began. Not with grand gestures, not with promises etched in stone, but with juice boxes and bedtime books, school pickups and Sunday strolls. Nathan didn't try to make up for the lost years with expensive gifts or over-the-top declarations. He didn't pretend to be perfect. He just showed up. Again and again and again. Gracie bloomed like a flower in sunlight. Her confidence grew. Her smile stretched wider. She started drawing pictures with 3 people instead of 2. One morning, she asked if she could call him Daddy all the time now, not just in pictures or in her prayers, but out loud. Lena hesitated for a breath, then nodded. "If that's what you want." Gracie threw her arms around her mother's waist. "I think it makes his heart happy." Lena smiled softly, brushing her daughter's hair back. "Then I think you should." It wasn't easy. Lena still double-checked every plan, still counted the minutes when Gracie was with him, still had quiet conversations with herself at night, reminding her heart that people could change, but they also sometimes didn't. Then one night, Gracie caught a fever, the kind that burns bright and fast, leaving you shaken. Lena stayed up all night, damp cloth on her daughter's forehead, whispering lullabies between thermometer checks and calls to the nurse line. And somewhere around 2 a.m., when her eyelids were heavy and her fingers trembling with exhaustion, her phone buzzed. "Nathan, hey, just checking in. Everything okay?" Lena stared at the screen, then typed back almost without thinking. "Lena, she has a fever." It came on fast. Seconds later, the phone rang. "I'll be there in 10, Nathan said. And he was. No hesitation, no excuses. He showed up at the door in sweatpants and a hoodie, carrying a bag of children's medicine, a digital thermometer, and a cartoon-themed water bottle. He didn't try to take over. He didn't push her aside. He just knelt by Gracie's bed and whispered, "Daddy's here," and helped cool her down, one careful moment at a time. After Gracie fell asleep again, "No, Hashem," began, Lena sank onto the couch, her body aching. Nathan brought her a glass of water, then sat on the edge of the coffee table, his hands folded. "She's lucky to have you," he said. Lena blinked away tears. "I don't always feel like enough." "You've been more than enough," he said gently. "You've been everything. I'm just trying to be worthy of stepping in now." And for the first time, Lena didn't feel afraid of his words, because they weren't empty. They were steady, present, true. From that night on, something in Lena began to shift. She started letting him in, not just into Gracie's life, but into the small, quiet corners of hers. She told him about the nights she used to cry in the bathroom so Gracie wouldn't hear, about the days she had taken and lost, about the moments she sat at the kitchen table, counting pennies, wondering how she'd afford milk that week. Nathan listened, not just with his ears, but with his whole heart. He never flinched, never judged. He simply held her story like a sacred thing. One Saturday morning, Nathan showed up with a surprise. "Family Day," he said. "I got tickets to the Children's Theater downtown. There's a puppet show Gracie would love." Lena blinked. "Family Day?" Nathan shrugged. "If that's okay." Gracie ran to the door, squealing. "A puppet show? Can we, Mommy, please?" Lena hesitated. The idea of the three of them spending an entire day together felt strange, like wearing a new coat that didn't quite fit yet. But then she looked at Gracie's glowing face and Nathan's hopeful smile, and she said yes. The day was simple, but magical. They laughed. They shared popcorn. Nathan held Gracie's hand the entire show, and Lena found herself smiling without thinking. They stopped for lunch at a diner on the way back, Gracie sipping chocolate milk with whipped cream while recounting every part of the play. That night, after the dishes were done and Gracie was tucked into bed, Lena found herself sitting on the porch beside Nathan, a soft breeze brushing against her face. "You're good with her," she said softly. "She makes it easy," he replied. "No," Lena said, shaking her head. "You've worked for it. You've earned it." Nathan looked at her, his eyes filled with something deeper than gratitude. "I'll keep earning it," he promised, "for as long as it takes." Dear listener, if your heart's been stirred by this story, hold on to it. Because this isn't just a tale about a father returning. This is about healing. It's about presence. It's about small, faithful steps after years of absence. Nathan didn't erase the past. He didn't pretend it hadn't happened. But what he did, what so many don't, was show up anyway. And Lena? She didn't let fear make her bitter. She let love lead, even when her heart still carried scars. And Gracie, sweet, shining Gracie, she taught them both what love really means. Forgiveness without hesitation. Joy without boundaries. Trust without proof. If you've ever been Lena, strong but tired, hopeful but guarded, drop a comment below. Tell her she's not alone. Tell her she's seen, that she's doing more than enough. If you've ever been Nathan, trying to make up for lost time, afraid you've missed your chance, comment below with encouragement. Let him know that trying matters more than perfection ever did. And if you've ever been Gracie, a child wishing, waiting, hoping for love to come back around, we see you. Your heart matters. Your voice matters. Like this story, share it, because every click reminds us that second chances are possible and that real love isn't loud. It shows up in the quiet, in the little things, in the choice to stay. Stay with us for what comes next, because this family is just getting started. And where there is effort, grace, and love, there is always a way forward. It was strange at first, not in a bad way, just unfamiliar, like learning to breathe a little deeper after holding your breath for years. That's what it felt like for Lena as the weeks unfolded, quietly, gently, and Nathan began weaving himself into the fabric of their lives. Not like a gust of wind sweeping in to rearrange everything, but like the slow, steady warmth of sunlight creeping through the blinds in the early morning. Easy to overlook at first, but impossible to ignore once it's fully there. They didn't call it a family. Not yet. It felt too soon, too delicate, like speaking the word might unravel all the fragile trust they had built. But still, something was happening. Something real. Every Tuesday, Nathan picked Gracie up from school and took her to the park. Every Friday, they met at the local library. He started showing up for piano recitals, teacher conferences, and even dentist appointments. He wasn't flashy about it. No grand entrances, no loud declarations. Just a quiet consistency, the kind Lena had learned not to expect from anyone. Gracie, of course, embraced it all with her whole heart. She didn't understand the caution her mother carried, the hesitations tucked behind Lena's eyes. She only saw what mattered to her. Her daddy showed up, and when he promised ice cream, he brought it. When he said he'd be there, he was. Every time. One rainy Thursday evening, Lena found herself standing in the kitchen chopping carrots for dinner, while Gracie sat at the table stringing beads onto a bracelet. Nathan was on the floor beside her, helping her sort the colors, his long legs crossed awkwardly, suit jacket draped over the back of a chair. He had come straight from work, no time to change, yet still found time to stop by, just to see how her day was. Gracie glanced up, beaming. "Daddy, do you like purple or green better?" Nathan thought for a moment, then pointed to purple. "Purple, it's the color of royalty." Gracie giggled. "You're not a king." Nathan grinned. "No, but you are my princess." Lena paused mid-chop, her chest tightening around something that wasn't pain, but wasn't quite peace either. It was emotion caught in between. She looked over her shoulder at the two of them, the man who had unknowingly left her behind all those years ago, and the child who had forgiven him without hesitation. And she felt something dangerous rise in her. Hope. That night, after Gracie had been tucked in, after the beads had been gathered and the dishes cleaned, Lena walked Nathan to the front door. The hallway was quiet, the light above them casting long shadows across the floor. "She loves you," Lena said softly, arms folded. Nathan looked down, his expression warm. "I love her too." Lena nodded, then hesitated. "But loving her means being steady, being here, not just when it's convenient or when it feels good." "I know that," Nathan said. "And I mean to be." She looked up at him, her eyes searching. "And what about me?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she sighed, unsure how to shape the words. "We've been moving around each other, like we're orbiting the same star but too afraid to land. I don't know what we're doing, and I don't want to confuse Gracie or myself." Nathan was quiet for a long time. Then finally he said, "Do you think we could ever be more than co-parents?" Lena looked away. "I don't know. Maybe. I haven't had time to think about me in years." "Well," he said gently, "I've been thinking about you every day since I saw you again." Silence. Then Lena whispered, "Let's just focus on Gracie for now." And so they did. But the truth was they were building something, intentionally or not, something that didn't have a label but felt a lot like home. Nathan began cooking dinner once a week at Lena's apartment. He'd bring over groceries, roll up his sleeves, and stand beside her at the stove like they'd done it 100 times before. Gracie would sit at the counter doing homework, occasionally piping in with requests for her famous spaghetti or grilled cheese cut into hearts. After dinner, they played games, read stories, watched cartoons with bowls of popcorn balanced on their knees. These weren't extraordinary moments. No, they were quiet, domestic, almost mundane, but they were sacred. Because for the first time in years, Lena didn't feel alone in the weight of raising a child. She didn't feel like the only one fighting for joy or the only one planning birthday parties and bedtime routines. And Gracie, she was thriving. Her teachers noticed it. Her drawings changed from solo stick figures to scenes of three, often holding hands under a bright yellow sun. She slept better, smiled more, laughed louder. One afternoon, while Gracie was at a friend's house for a play date, Lena and Nathan sat on the front steps, coffee mugs in hand, watching the rain streak the sidewalk. "I don't know when it happened," Lena said quietly, "but I'm not afraid of you anymore." Nathan turned toward her, eyebrows raised slightly. "You were afraid of me?" She nodded. "Not in the way you think. I was afraid you'd disappear again, that I'd start depending on you and then one day, poof, gone." Nathan's face fell. "I hate that I gave you that fear." Lena reached out, her fingers brushing his knuckles. "But you're still here." "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Even if this thing between us never becomes more, I'm in Gracie's life for good. And if I'm honest," he paused, eyes searching hers, "I'm hoping I can be in yours too." Lena didn't respond right away. She didn't need to. Her silence wasn't rejection, it was reflection. She was thinking, feeling, measuring her own heart and how far it had come since the day Gracie ran across that diner floor calling out, "Daddy." She looked up, eyes wet with unshed emotion. "One day at a time." Nathan smiled. "One day at a time." Dear listener, are you still with us? If you are, then you've felt it too, that quiet unfolding of something beautiful. The slow, deliberate rebuilding of trust. The kind of love that doesn't scream, but whispers, "I'm here. I'll stay." Lena isn't a woman who gives her heart easily. She can't afford to. Life taught her how to be careful, how to build walls, how to hold the world together with tired hands and a brave smile. But look at her now, slowly unlocking the doors she once bolted shut, slowly letting in the light. And Nathan, oh Nathan, a man who once missed the most important years of his daughter's life, now doing everything he can to show up, not with perfection, but with presence. And Gracie, sweet, wise beyond her years, simply loving them both through it all, unbothered by the complications adults tangle themselves in. She just knows what her heart knows. When love shows up and stays, it's real. It was never meant to become this, not at first. When Lena first opened the door to Nathan, after 6 years of silence, absence, and unanswered prayers, she hadn't been hoping for love. She wasn't looking for a partner or a happy ending. She was just trying to protect her daughter, to shield Gracie from another crack in a heart too small to understand abandonment. So she had set boundaries, clear ones, pickup times, communication rules, no overnight visits. She had told herself, this isn't about me, it's about her, about what she needs. And at first it was. Nathan had agreed to everything, no protests, no bargaining. He had come humbly, grateful for any piece of time Lena would let him have. And so their new rhythm began. Two people tiptoeing around their shared history, learning how to raise a child together without reopening old wounds. But as the weeks stretched into months, something began to change. It wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no stolen glances or sudden confessions, just quiet moments, ordinary ones. Moments that made Lena pause longer than she intended. Moments that made her heart ache in ways she hadn't felt in years. It was the way Nathan carried Gracie on his shoulders through the park, pointing out clouds that looked like elephants. It was the way he washed the dishes after dinner without being asked, whistling a song Gracie had sung hours earlier. It was the way he noticed when Lena was tired and handed her a cup of coffee with just the right amount of cream, remembering, without ever being told, how she liked it. One evening after Gracie had fallen asleep early from a long school field trip, Nathan stayed behind to help Lena clean up. The apartment was still, the only sound, the clink of silverware being returned to drawers and the hum of the fridge. Lena leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching him quietly. "You don't have to do all this, you know." Nathan looked up, a half smile playing on his lips. "I know, but I want to." She nodded slowly. "You're not who I expected you to be." He dried his hands and stepped closer, not too close, just enough to be heard. "Who did you expect?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "Someone distant, detached, just going through the motions. But you care. Not just about her, about me too." Nathan's smile faded, replaced by something deeper. I do care, Lena. I always have. Even when I didn't know how to show it. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Her eyes shimmered in the kitchen light, not with tears, but with a kind of unspoken recognition. She was seeing him, and he was letting her. The next time Nathan came over, it was a Sunday morning, pancake day. Gracie was mixing the batter, flour dusting the tip of her nose. Lena was flipping the pancakes on the skillet when Nathan walked in with a bouquet of fresh sunflowers. For you, he said, placing them on the counter. Lena blinked, caught off guard. What's this for? Nathan shrugged. No reason. Just thought they'd make you smile. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Her smile said everything. After breakfast, the three of them curled up on the couch, Gracie in the middle, tucked under a patchwork blanket. They watched a movie, something animated and silly, but halfway through, Gracie fell asleep, her head resting on Nathan's chest, her small hand still gripping Lena's. And just like that, without meaning to, they were all connected. Heart to heart, a triangle of warmth and safety, a picture of something neither of them had dared to hope for again. That night, when Nathan stood at the door, keys in hand, he hesitated. She's happy, he said, his voice soft. She is, Lena agreed, her hand on the door frame. And you? He asked, not pressing, just wondering. Lena looked down, then back at him. I'm learning how to be. Nathan nodded, then whispered, me too. After that, the shifts were subtle, but unmistakable. Lena found herself telling him about her dreams, how she used to want to open a bakery one day, back when life was simpler. Nathan listened, not just with interest, but with investment. He asked questions, encouraged her, even brought her a recipe book with a note tucked inside. For the baker in you, never too late. She found herself laughing more when he was around. Real laughter, the kind that made her eyes crinkle and her chest loosen. He'd do impressions of Gracie's teacher or dance poorly in the kitchen just to hear her laugh again. One evening, they took Gracie out for a walk after dinner. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the sidewalk. Gracie skipped ahead, chasing fireflies with a mason jar, while Lena and Nathan walked slowly behind. She's everything, Lena said, watching her daughter's joy. She is, Nathan agreed. But so are you. Lena looked at him, startled. What do you mean? I mean you've carried this alone for so long. You gave her everything. I see it, and I see you. She blinked fast, not used to being seen that way. Not since before Gracie was born. Thank you, she whispered. They walked the rest of the way in silence, but something had changed. They weren't just co-parents anymore. They were something more. Not a couple, not lovers, not yet, but two people standing at the edge of something fragile and beautiful, something real. One night, after Gracie had gone to bed and the dishes had been done and the apartment was bathed in soft lamplight, Lena sat beside Nathan on the couch. I've been afraid to admit it, she said, staring at her hands, but I like having you here. Nathan turned toward her, not speaking, just listening. She continued, it's not just about Gracie anymore. I feel it. When you're here, things feel lighter. I'm not used to that. I'm not used to someone sharing the weight. He reached for her hand, gently threading his fingers through hers. Then let me help carry it, as long as you'll let me. Thus she looked at him, and for the first time in years, she let her guard down completely. I want to, she said, but I need to go slow. He smiled. I'll be right here. And he was. Dear listener, are your eyes glistening like ours? Because if they are, then you feel what's happening here. This isn't just a story about a mother and father learning to raise a child. It's a story about healing, about how love doesn't always come roaring in like a storm. Sometimes it tiptoes in, through a shared cup of coffee, through a silent car ride where nothing is said but everything is felt, through laughter that feels like sunlight on skin too long in the cold. Lena isn't just a mother. She's a survivor, a fighter, a woman who loved her child enough to do it alone, day after day, without help, without rest, without a guarantee that things would ever get easier. And Nathan, he's proof that people can change. That absence doesn't have to mean abandonment. That showing up, really showing up, can begin to repair even the deepest cracks. The backyard was alive with color, streamers swaying in the breeze, of balloons tied to fence posts, the scent of grilled hot dogs wafting through the air. Laughter bubbled from every corner, echoing against the soft hum of cheerful music. And in the middle of it all, wearing a crown made of pink felt and glitter glue, stood Gracie, 7 years old today. Her cheeks were painted like a butterfly, her smile witty and free, her hands clutching a paper wand that she waved with royal delight. She didn't know it, but today wasn't just her birthday. It was something more. It was the first time in her life she celebrated not just another year of growing, but the gift of a family finally made whole. Nathan stood by the grill, flipping burgers with one hand and reaching for ketchup with the other, while keeping an eye on Gracie through it all. His sleeves were rolled up, his tie loosened, a smudge of frosting on his shirt from when Gracie insisted he help decorate the cupcakes. He didn't care. He had never felt more present, more alive. Lena stood near the porch chatting with a few neighbors, her laugh light and easy in a way it hadn't been in years. Every few minutes, her eyes drifted to Gracie, to Nathan, and her chest swelled with something she was still learning to accept. Peace. For so long, she had braced herself for disappointment, for things to fall apart just when she began to feel safe. But not today. Today was different. Today, joy didn't feel like a risk. It felt like a reward. Gracie ran up to her, her crown slightly askew. "Mommy, did you see me dance? Daddy taught me the spin." Lena laughed, fixing the crown. "I did, sweetheart. You were magical." Gracie looked up at her, suddenly serious. "Mommy?" "Yes?" "Can we have birthday parties like this every year? With Daddy and you and all the people we love?" Lena knelt down, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. "Yes, baby, every year." Gracie grinned and darted off, her cape fluttering behind her. Lena stood slowly, watching her daughter disappear into the blur of balloons and giggles. And when she turned, Nathan was there, holding 2 cups of lemonade. "One for the queen of the party," he said with a soft smile, handing her one. She took it with a nod of thanks, their fingers brushing. "You did good today." "So did you." They stood in silence for a moment, watching Gracie play. The air around them was full of warmth, not just from the sun, but from something deeper, something earned. "I was thinking," Nathan said slowly, "about what you said a while back, about being cautious, about taking things slow." Lena glanced up at him, her expression unreadable. "I've tried not to rush you," he said. "I know this hasn't been easy, but I want to ask you something." She turned fully to him now, her heart quietly preparing itself. "I know we've done a lot of healing. I know we've rebuilt trust, but I don't want to just be in your life as Gracie's father anymore. I want to be in your life as your partner, if you're ready." Lena's breath caught, not because she was surprised, but because deep down, she'd been waiting to hear those words when she was finally ready to believe them. "You're not the same man you were 6 years ago," she said quietly. "I hope not," he replied, "and I'm not the same woman either." "I know, but maybe that's a good thing." Nathan's voice softened. "Lena, I love you. I've loved you through every drawing Gracie gave me, through every bedtime story you let me read, through every cup of coffee we shared on the porch when the world was quiet. I love your strength, your honesty, your heart, and I want a life with you. Not just weekends and co-parenting schedules, but a life, a home, a future." She looked at him for a long moment, tears welling in her eyes, but not from pain, from recognition, from relief, from love. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I've loved you longer than I realized, but I needed to see you stay. And you did. You stayed." They didn't kiss, not right away. They didn't need to, because this wasn't about grand gestures. This was about the quiet commitment they had already been living out every day, brick by brick, memory by memory. Later that evening, after the party had wound down, after the guests had gone home and Gracie was fast asleep in her room with glitter still clinging to her fingers, Lena and Nathan sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a soft blanket, sipping tea under the stars. The moon hung low, casting a silver glow across the yard, where balloons still danced in the breeze. "She's going to remember today," Nathan said. Lena nodded. "She'll remember the laughter, the love. And she'll know, he added, that no matter how messy the beginning was, her story turned into something beautiful. Lena rested her head on his shoulder. So did ours. And just like that, they sat together. No longer fractured people trying to piece together a past, but whole hearts building something new, something lasting. A family not defined by how it started, but by how it endured, how it healed, how it chose love again and again, even when it was hard. Dear listener, if you've made it to this point in the story, let's take a breath together. Let's hold this moment, because this isn't just a story about a birthday party or a long-lost father finding his place. This is a story about redemption, about choosing to stay when walking away would be easier, about rebuilding trust not through apologies, but through presence, and about love, not the fairy tale kind with roses and fireworks, but the real kind, the kind that shows up on rainy nights, learns how to braid little girl hair, and says, "I'm not going anywhere," and means it. Maybe you've been Lena. Maybe you've carried the weight of the world on your shoulders, trying to be everything for someone you love. Maybe you've had to hold it all together even when it felt like everything was falling apart. If so, drop a comment below. Tell her you see her. Tell her she's stronger than she thinks. That healing is possible. Maybe you've been Nathan. Maybe you've made mistakes. Maybe you've missed moments you can never get back. But maybe, like him, you've chosen to show up anyway, to begin again, even when you were scared. If so, comment for him too. Let him know that effort matters, that showing up, even late, is still showing up. And maybe, just maybe, you've been Gracie. Young at heart, full of dreams, holding on to the hope that people can change, that love can find its way back, that family isn't always about how it looks, but about how it feels. Then this story is for you, because the truth is, every one of us is walking through a story of our own. Some of us are in the middle of the mess. Some of us are just starting to believe in joy again. And some of us are finally reaching the porch, under the stars, with a cup of tea and a full heart, saying, this is what I hope for. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video. Not for the numbers, but for the message. So others can find this story. So someone who needs it tonight can sit in their car or their living room and feel a little less alone. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because more stories like this are waiting. Stories about love, loss, resilience, and the quiet ways we put ourselves back together again. We share these tales not just to entertain, but to remind each other what it means to be human. And before you go, we want to hear from you. What was your favorite part of this story? Have you ever experienced a second chance that changed everything? What advice would you give to someone like Lena, like Nathan, like Gracie? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read them, we feel them. We cherish this community we've built together. Thank you for listening. Thank you for feeling, and thank you for believing with us that no matter how broken the past may feel, the future is still ours to write. See you in the next story. Until then, take care of your heart and never stop believing in love that stays.